think it's a real thing that you have.
Yes.
And simultaneously saying that if there is no God, then free will makes no sense.
Yes.
That does read to me like an argument for God's existence, such that in order to either say that there is free will, in order to say that there is free will, one must believe in God. And that does strike me as an argument for God's existence.
I mean, to slightly curve that, or to kind of sand off the rough edges there, I would say that the argument I made is an argument for something extra natural.
Sure.
Now, you can call that God or not God, but the thing that I'm making the argument for is that you cannot get from a materialist Darwinist universe to free will. That is not possible. So I know that the way you solve that is that you...
Okay, so I would disagree with this idea that what I called it is above the natural. Well, that would be supernatural. He says whether you call it supernatural or not, well, that would be supernatural if it's above the natural. But yes, so that's a little weak already. But then to move to the point that really a Darwinian mechanistic universe would, remove the possibility of free will in this reductionist naturalist account. That's correct. So hopefully he can sustain this argument.
Say that there is no free will.
That's right.
And what I'm saying to you is you don't act that way.
I hear this all the time. People...
Now, that is true. That's actually oftentimes a way that we argue in TAG, is that we point out that a lot of atheist argumentation says something, they act as if they believe that, but then they don't actually believe that. I do think it's a powerful rhetorical point. It's a good moral point. But in their worldview, they can just say, yeah, but I don't have to live I can live contrary to what I actually think is the case, right? So I think there's value in calling this out, but it's limited in its usefulness, and there's a lot stronger directions that you can go. So I hope he continues to press in a stronger way, but it does have a good rhetorical value to point this out.
Say, look, you may say there's no free will, but you don't act as though that's the case. I suppose that I'm just confused as to what it would look like for somebody to act as if they believe there was no free will. I mean, the very argument that there is no free will that I subscribe to, at least one of the various forms that it takes, is a sort of Schopenhauerian view that you can do as you will, you just can't will what you will, and that you are essentially just a biological...
Well, I'm very sus. I doubt that he's actually read Schopenhauer, but even if that were the case, let's listen to what he claimed it was again.
View that you can do as you will, you just can't will what you will.
So I can do what I will, but I can't will what I will. Well, number one, remember he's a determinist, so you're not actually willing. And so he's probably going to bite the bullet and say that, yeah, free will is an illusion, it's illusory, but I'm going to continue to live in my illusion as if I have free will. So that's probably what he's going to say.
And that you...
Of course, that's not going to do him any good because it's not going to give you any account of ethics at all. He's going to have to surrender ethics. Remember, this was a guy who a year or two ago was vehemently arguing that veganism was a universal ethical requirement. Remember, that's the goober we're talking about here.
Are essentially just a biological machine reacting to its to its internal and evolutionary drives. That's what's happening. Now,
you're just a biological machine reacting to internal drives. Now, he's given on a silver platter a complete dismantling opportunity for Ben Shapiro. So hopefully Ben Shapiro has caught that plate of dismantling feasting that he just offered up, because just like my debate with JF, he doesn't even understand. The atheist makes a fool of himself. He doesn't even see that all of his argumentation has just been negated and canceled out and disqualified by that proposition that he just put on a platter. Because now it means that everything he's saying is no longer an argument, but merely a determined chemical reaction and process. Did you catch that? Because he now believes in a dysteleological universe, a universe with no purpose. Therefore, there is no such thing as truth and falsehood in a chaotic, meaningless, purposeless universe. And so therefore, none of his decisions are truth-directed. None of his propositions are truth-directed. They are merely the irrational effects of a chemical reaction in a chaotic process that is determined. So he did not actually choose the true over the false, because there is no choosing. And low IQ atheists are always like, but he still chose, even if it's determined, he still chose the true. He didn't choose anything. There's no he. There's no he there choosing. But he still was determined to choose the true. No, he wasn't. There is no he. There is no choosing. There is no true. Because you've equalized the true and the false, the good and the bad. They're all just what is.
Call that nihilistic if you like, that's a separate question. But as to the question of how this would make one act.
Actually, if it's a nihilistic ethic, it's not a separate question. It's the very thing in question, dummy.
The idea that this might cause us to sort of lay around in bed all day or something. The very mechanism that I think is responsible for eliminating the possibility of free will, that is, the drives that make people do what they do. Like I say, do exactly that. Make people do what they do. They make them get out of bed in the morning. Why do you get out of bed and go and make your breakfast if there's no free will? So well, you go and get breakfast because there's no free will and something is driving you to do that that's outside of your control.
For sure. So to get back to the nihilism point, which you kind of put aside, so that means that this conversation is essentially worthless in any sort of real sense. I mean,
yes, there we go. Ben Shapiro is correct here. This is the very point that was made to JF in our debate. So he's on the right road here. I'm a little surprised. Not that I don't think Ben Shapiro is a dumb person. I think he's a smart person. So I'm not saying that he can't do a good debate. I mean, we've all heard him owning the 20-year-old college goobers, which again, anyone with half a sense of reality and truth and an IQ above room temperature can own those people. But he is going down the right road of argumentation that I would go down, so he gets a point for that.
Effectively, we were driven here by evolutionary biology and environment to have this conversation. Everybody who's watching this is driven by evolutionary biology and environment to have a particular reaction to that thing, and ever round the cycle goes. That seems like a very purposeless life. Maybe again, I'm drawing from a realm that is not evolutionarily biologically connected. The word purpose is really, teleology obviously has been taken out of the realm of science pretty thoroughly by
That's all correct. Ben Shapiro is correct here, and this is the right type of argumentation. When you heard me say that the universe is dysteleological, I'm saying the same thing he's saying there. That's just a fancy term for no purpose. Teleology being the idea of purpose in the world, in nature, in our actions, in terms of the whole universe having a telos or a purpose. Hence, because God created it, it has meaning. Meaning makes sense in that universe. Meaning does not make sense and is impossible in a deterministic universe. So this is the right direction.
Atheists and by many people in the sciences, although I would argue that, again, most scientists speak in the realm of teleology literally all the time, and they're borrowing language from the language of teleology, even when they're describing functions of particular body parts, right? The heart pumps blood in order to keep you alive, right? They're constantly using language that's teleological in nature. The real question that I have, and this is what goes to the question that you were asking at the beginning, before the sort of pre-question, which was the good of religion to society. One of those goods is people believing that their free will matters and this actually is a useful thing. So I believe that it is deeply important for people in society to believe that they have the capacity to change themselves.
Like already from the outset, the way the debate's framed is kind of a losing proposition. The debate is not free will and determinism. The debate is titled, is religion good for society? First of all, there's no such thing as religion, as if all of the different religions are part of this overall worshiping of deities and of a generic natural theology God. There's true religion and false religion. But there's no such thing as like generic religion. And the question is already out of whack, because in order to know if religion is good for society or not, we need to know what the good is. But the very question itself gets that out of order by assuming that you have some criteria of the good by which to judge the religion. But religion, or metaphysics and theology, is the basis for and the grounding for the good. So it's a dumb way to propose the debate. But of course, this is the type of religion that or debate that like normies love this type of framing of the debate, right? But it's all backwards, and it's ignoring the nuclear strength apologetic that we could have, which is to turn the tables and ask Alex O'Connor and Ben Shapiro as well, okay, what is the good and what is the basis for your criteria, your grounding, your judging, your benchmark for the good here? Because that's what's already presupposed, and nobody's even asking the question, which is like philosophy 101, to ask, well, what is the good? So how are you going to judge whether religion's good for society without first determining how you know what the good is?
And to make different decisions than what biology would drive them to do. So you say, well, it's biology that drives you to get out of bed in the morning, which is almost Calvinist in sort of the way that it's described, right? It's like you're predestined to get out of bed.
He's actually correct in that analogy that the mechanistic Darwinian naturalist universe really just took Calvinism and smushed it into the mechanistic process of the universe itself. And there is actually, I think, some validity to that historical account that people give. That out of the Enlightenment, a lot of the Scottish, Enlightenment philosophers like David Hume and others, right? What was the theology existing at that time throughout Scotland? Scottish Covenanter Calvinism. What do the Puritans believe? Puritanical, James Edwards radical, extreme, occasionalist version of predestination. So, yeah, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to naturalistic predetermination. So once the Puritans and the Enlightenment, the New Light Presbyterians and all those people had ditched the Trinity and ditched miracles, they went from Unitarianism to straight up naturalistic determinism. Yeah, hop, skip, and a jump, logical progression. So he's actually correct.
In the morning, so thus you get out of bed in the morning. But the reality is that we are constantly making decisions as though those decisions make a difference in the universe. And what social science actually does tend to show is that when people believe that they have control over their own actions, that when they believe that they're capable of changing the way that they live, they do make those changes with more alacrity and in better directions than if they don't believe that. If people tend to believe in a deterministic universe.
This whole argument about people do better when they believe this really is irrelevant if the question is about what's true and what's false. So again, the misnamed premise of this debate, is religion good for society, is just the wrong-headed way to have the debate. It's a question of what's true and what's false. Not, is it good for me, right? I mean, the whole framing of it's like an Enlightenment, utilitarian pleasure principle. What do I get out of this? Is it good for me? Do it make me do good and feel good? I mean, might as well make the topic of the debate, does religion make people feel good? I mean, it's equivalent to, is it good for society? Do it make me feel good? Do it give warm fuzzy? Well, that's a dumb way to have that debate. It doesn't make any sense. Does the religion make me feel good? I mean, it might, but what does that have to do with whether it's true or false? I mean, I don't know. If I was asked to come have this debate, I would be like, well, the framing of the debate itself doesn't make any sense. Is religion good for society? I would say that presupposes that we know what the good is. Maybe we should debate what is the good, right?
Universe.
But remember, almost nobody studies metaphysics. Almost nobody knows what these terms are, what these things mean. Almost nobody knows informal fallacies. So it's like, you're just, it's like the conversation that we have with James Sexton, right? And he's a highly intelligent person, obviously. He knows all kinds of stuff I don't know about. He's an expert in law and all that, sure. But being an expert in law and the ways of the world and all this, like none of that had any it didn't grant any advantage to whether or not the argument was fallacious, whether or not what was being argued was true or false.
They do act worse. So it may...
So it's like the constant frustration that I experience is that we're talking about stuff that are, what can I liken it to? Imagine we're mechanics. And we know everything about the structure and makeup of a car. We know all the parts, how they go together. This thing over here, this runs this thing. This lubricates this other thing to make this thing go, And it's just like this super complex, mobile computer that rolls down the road. And we know all about it, right? And so everybody else rides in cars and drives cars, but they don't know anything about the inner workings of the car, right? So when somebody says, let's have a discussion of cars. And by the car, I don't mean this in some arrogant way, like the car is God and I know everything about God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the domain of laws of thought and argumentation and debate. That's what I'm talking about here. And metaphysics and the basics of philosophy, right? The car's philosophy here, not knowing everything about God for all you piety goons in the audience. And so everybody else is like driving around in the car and they don't care about the inner workings of the car, right? And so when we go to talk to these people about cars and I say, tell me what you think of the workings of a car. What do most people say? Oh yeah, dude, you're talking about my Bugatti and it run fast. Put oil in. Put gas in, it go quick. Right? That's what people are thinking. Cool car, drive fast. Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla. And I'm thinking, engine, ignition, part, all this guy. Like, that's what I'm thinking of when I think of cars. So when we have this conversation, I say, yes, and I don't know shit about cars, so I'm trying to make this analogy work. But I don't know anything about cars. Yes, my friend. What do you think of the drive shaft and its components? The way that they connect to the ignition. Car go fast, right? They don't know what you're talking about. The heck's a drive shaft? I don't know. Shaft. Oh yeah, shaft, right? Well, I don't know what a drive shaft is. Car go fast. Car look cool. Car get chick, right? That's what most people are thinking about cars. We're not thinking about the workings and the components, right? And it's like most people, it's imagine, well, the car works because you could just put liquid inside of it and it go. So any liquid can go in, or are there rules to what liquids you can put in the car to make it go? It's the same with argumentation, with logic, with epistemology. You can't just say anything and make argument go. But people can't get this. It's just like, it's two different languages. When I say car, I'm thinking of the drive shaft and all these stupid parts and components. And this thing ignites and causes a chemical reaction and that runs this thing and this goes through this part. And everyone else is just thinking, car go fast. Okay, so fine, car go fast, but there's rules to car go fast. Like, you can't just put bug juice, right? You can't put Purplesaurus Rex in the gas tank and it runs, right? You can't just push accelerator and it go through wall. No, it doesn't go, that thing doesn't go through walls. There's rules about, there's things that govern the logic of that car. It doesn't go through walls. I mean, you can try to go through a wall, but car no go fast when you go through wall, right? But no one thinks of the laws of thought and argumentation this way, but they're the same. There's rules to it. And everybody already kind of knows this, because if I were to, imagine I were having a conversation, or you've all experienced this with relatives. You're at the Thanksgiving turkey dinner, and you're violating all the rules of propriety and wisdom and arguing with your pervert uncle about whether or not there's conspiracies. You think 9/11 is an inside job? I ought to take your ass to the strip club and set you straight, boy, you dumb. Yeah. Right? Does your uncle know the laws of argumentation and logic? Of course not. And what does he say? Your uncle, drunk uncle says, 9/11 ain't an inside job because that don't feel right to me. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but how it feels to you, Uncle Jimmy, don't mean nothing. It don't mean squat, dude. That's a dumb argument. If you tell Uncle Jimmy that's a dumb argument, he's going to set his Doral cigarette down, and he's going to set his Michelob Light down, and he's going to take that mason ring and give you a nice little indentation across your jaw, because it's a Thanksgiving brawl. Don't argue with your drunk uncle. But drunk uncle is a great example of like what types of fallacies most people are going to churn out, right? 9/11 ain't an inside job because it's all them crazy towel head people, right? That's not an argument. That's just a spit out phrase. What if and then I turn around to drunk uncle and I say, drunk uncle, your arguments are false because your Dorals suck. My Dorals don't suck. I've been smoking this since I was 16. Only got emphysema and cancer 4 times. What are you talking about? He would see, even he would know that's a bad argument. So everyone knows deep down, even drunk uncle knows deep down, Uncle Jimmy, he knows there's bad arguments. And yet, even though we all kind of know this and sense it deep down, it's kind of obvious. Everyone just acts as if there are no laws of thought. There are no laws of logic. There's no laws of argumentation. There's no rules to any of this. It's all just arbitrary. It's all made up. And debating is just a demonstration of will to power. It's just power dynamics and being flashy and being silver-tongued and saying quick things and shutting people down. That's like destiny debate, right? Talking fast, that kind of thing. Which Ben Shapiro does that too, right? But Ben Shapiro can actually kind of debate, it seems like, right? He's kind of an actual sort of debater. I mean, again, I've not watched a lot of Ben Shapiro. I've seen the viral clips everybody has seen of this or that owning of the lib, from 5 or 6 years ago or whatever. But he's actually making a good argument here.
Divinity raises the humanity in Christ through theosis, and that's exactly what we experience.